Welcome back to On Air with Dr. Pete. I'm your host, Dr. Pete Economos, psychologist, professor, meditation instructor, all these things, Zen practitioner. I wanted to bring you an episode as we are in this fall season about resilience in the classroom, in life. And so coping for the classroom and beyond, because that's what life is about. If you're listening, tuning in, and I don't know why you clicked it, but thanks for clicking this episode. Resilience isn't always about being tough. Here in Jersey, we talk a lot about grit. It's not about never struggling. It's not about, even with grit, that you don't fall down or stumble or fail. That is actually it's not that you never do any of that. Resilience is that when that happens, because it will happen, you bounce back, you adapt, you grow. That's what we're looking. And I think what I've noticed in today's world is that it's just when you fall, there's so much there's so much there to support you so that you don't get that hurt. And look, I don't want people to get hurt. And every time I got hurt is where I, learned and practiced resilience. And that's the biggest key. Resilience is learned. So defined, resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks, adapt well to change, and keep going in the face of adversity. It is not a fixed experience. And that's what, we have some of these like, I have the word adoption in my head, but that's not what I'm thinking of. Twin studies. And you could have, two twins, right? So really biologically connected and very different, so both can go to war and one comes back with PTSD and one doesn't. We don't know why. And so what I would say is that probably resilience is a little bit of a factor of that. And resilience is a learned experience. It's practiced and it can be strengthened. I often think about it like a muscle, like anything else. It's the more we use it, the stronger it becomes. And so that means that once in a while, you have to learn how to handle a bad grade or the friend drama that's going to happen, trying out for a team and not making it. My generation, the ones that listen to the 90s playlist on Peloton, will know, like we'll say things like not everyone gets a trophy, because when we grew up, we didn't all get trophies. And so today you do notice that people are really kind of in that world. And it's just what it is. You have to learn how to fail, because that's what helps to strengthen resilience. I wrote a paper once that was, I think I titled it something like learning to be second. And that is something that no one ever wants. Like no one wants to get second place. And very few of us are in first place. And that's real, and that's okay. So, even if you're struggling, and if someone is struggling, it doesn't mean that you are not resilient. Those are the struggles and the very training ground for resilience. And that's what you want to think about. It's not that, oh, I don't have a resilient kid, or this generation is not resilient. They're just learning how to be. And so what that means for us is that we have to take a step back and watch them, fail, watch them get hurt, because that's how they will cultivate that resilience. So why do we need resilience? There is increased academic pressure right now, standardized testing, competition. We had a guest on, Shannon Brady, talking about the challenges of getting into college. And as a college professor, I don't understand how and why college admissions has become what it's become. I mean, it's wild. It's very competitive. And I think some of this comes from my privilege, because I was, very resourced. I grew up in a very, like affluent area, not very affluent, but an affluent area with, good education and all that. And so I think when it came time for college, especially as an athlete, going, in the late 90s, I did get rejected from at least one school. But it was just a different time in that way. And so now you notice that there's so much more competition. Social media and wasn't around when I was doing that. Now, people are posting where they're getting admissions to. And so it adds to that, that stress about this. There's also global uncertainty. So there's lots of wars going on right now, all the other sort of economic instabilities. This is coming in the classroom. Classrooms are learning, for shooter sort of emergencies, what to do. I never had that training in school. I think we just learned how to stop, drop, and roll. That was probably the most intense thing we did, was that if there was a fire, but nothing else. And so this is another piece of it. So it's when you're building resilience, it's not just the academic success, but it's also just long-term well-being, and then mental health stuff, because this is what we really want to do. There's tons of research that show that resilient kids have better emotional regulation, stronger problem solving, and healthier relationships. And that's why we want to build that, and so what I'm saying to you parents that are listening is that means that we have to watch them fall a little bit. We don't want to be there to pick them up every time that they fall. So here are some things that students can do, right? I always like to give you some, practical takeaways. Teach students, or your kids, simple breathing exercises. I had a colleague recently post about how his son joined him for his meditation. Super cool. I'm always curious how the camera gets there, but super cool, because that's what you want to do. Like integrate that into the household. Teachers can do that. If there's any students listening, you'll know that pretty much every class I have at least one mindfulness exercise. Back in the day, in pre-COVID, usually, almost always, it began and ended my class. Because it's a really good strategy to like help get people into the situation, but also just as a behaviorist, it's like the beginning and the end. Reframe mistakes. Mistakes. We do have mistakes and mistakes. You want to reframe mistakes. They will happen, and it's not like making lemons out of lemonade, but it's just saying like, cool, you failed. Like you're gonna fail, and I think using some reframing language, some positive self-talk of like, okay, I'm gonna get stronger from this, or I'm gonna learn. I just got to practice. You can also practice gratitude in all of this. So, some sort of reflection, and you can maybe like do this with, a student where they could just say like, instead of spiraling into like, I'm really bad at some subject, like if you bomb like a math test, you could just be like, well, how did I prepare? Can I prepare more? And maybe I'll spend more time with my teacher, or get a tutor, or YouTube. Because again, even if I don't have resources and can't afford a tutor, or my teacher won't stay with me after class, maybe I can use YouTube. Find some of the resources that are out there for us to kind of improve on all of this. So I realize that I'm talking to like all different type of people in this episode. I'm thinking about what the teachers are experiencing, parents, what they're experiencing, maybe a coach. This is probably one of the biggest things that comes to me is like, how do I get the person to want to be better? How do I motivate them? And so that's another thing to think about in resilience. Resilience is watching someone fail and then helping them connect with their values to what helps them motivate to then get back up. It's a lot of times when I work with athletes that get injured, it stinks. I mean, there's nothing good about it. It stinks because you might miss the season that you were so excited about. You may or may not even know how challenging your physical therapy process will be, and painful. So it's not like, oh, this was meant to be. And no, because it really stinks. So it's acknowledging that this stinks, and then, okay, what am I going to do? And one of the like simplest reframes is, maybe this thing that I just injured is going to be stronger. Because a lot of people think about just getting it back to where it was, and they're like, oh, I'm never going to get back to where it was. Good. Because where it was maybe was limiting. What about getting it somewhere that it's never been? And that's really the power of mindfulness, to say that nothing is, and everything's constantly changing. And so if you're not growing, and that's what resilience is resilience is just growing in the face of adversity and growing in the moment. So, so for coaches, and so for everybody, all these people, it's that. But, I was thinking about for teachers, teachers, be sure to be modeling calmness in the classroom. So even though if they might be driving you insane in a moment, model the calmness, praise effort and process, not just outcomes. And that's the biggest thing in sports. You want to praise what the process, not the outcome. Create safe space for failure, another important aspect of it. And community circles or morning check-ins help people connect. We are losing, this ability to connect. And for parents, all that stuff you can do, but also encourage problem solving. Let them solve some things. Watch them. Even though you can do it more quickly, you might be tired, you had a long day at work, but can you just encourage them to do that? Let them face their own challenges as well. Don't just always rescue them. Maintain routines. So that predictability, like I said in my classroom, I always would start and end with the mindfulness. That predictability does help, because routines create habits. And share your own stories of failing. I think teachers can do that too. So some tips and tools about resilience as you go into this school year. So thanks for tuning in. But, resilience, to end is not only about, it's not about avoiding struggling. It's really about facing struggling in the face of it, grow from it, keep moving forward. So, whether you're a student, a teacher, a parent, whoever, a coach, whoever's listening, resilience is a skill that can be cultivated every single day in small and practical ways. So there was lots of tools and tips in here, but thanks for tuning into this episode on resilience. This is a normal part of life. And so I thank you for tuning in. What are you doing today to build your resilience? But tune in next week to learn some more skills on other things. But we're thankful for you tuning in today. Encourage you to like, follow, and share. Everything's at officialdrpete.com. Until then, spread a little kindness and stay well.